And when I was visiting, Ed was writing his Insect Societies. We did not interact so much because he was very busy writing this wonderful book, his first great book. But then, when I became a professor, we sort of met and became, over the years, close friends, and discovered more and more, first of all, our joint love for the ants, for the fascinating world of the social insects as model systems. We probably would not have stayed with the ants if they would not have been principal model systems to ask principal questions.
Right.
We always would have liked ants and collect ants, but working with them as we did, and it turned out that our talents are very complementary. They overlap in a great deal, and we...
When you write a book like The Ants or The Superorganism, how do you divide your labor? I mean, you told me, Bert, you take the photographs.
Well,
but how do you actually,
well,
there's a
actually,
division of labor here as with the ants. How do you do it?
I'm less modest than Bert, so what I'll do, I'll say, we divide the chapters up.
You divide the chapters.
That's right.
In both cases, the ants and this one, each of us took chapters that we wanted to write. Okay. And we communicated
and
about
then we exchanged them.
And then exchanged them and so on.
Yeah.
So that actually works very well.
And work it over and over mutually,
so
you know.
What are you working on now? I take it that you have already launched into your next project. Are you going to continue with ants and insects?
Well, I am back in experimental research at ASU. You know, we founded there a large international research group, all focusing, about 12 professors, just focusing on social insects and I have, after having finished the superorganism, I decided for the next couple of years I go back entirely to research. But I don't know how long it takes, and then something else will come up probably in the mind.
So you might collaborate again.
We might. No one knows.
Now, as far as Ed goes, I mean, I should mention, I think probably our audience might know best your book, Concilium, which is an extraordinary effort to unify the sciences and even science and the humanities. And that book, I guess it was controversial, as some of your other writing was as well.
I hope.
You want it to be controversial.
Well, in part, I wrote that book knowing it would be controversial because I was suggesting bridging social sciences, humanities, and the natural sciences. I knew it would be controversial, but I had very much the liberal arts in mind in presenting an overview of how it could all be connected together. It would be a subject of philosophical discussion. It has been the subject of a number of conferences, but also as a teaching tool.
Have you noticed, I mean, what you're doing, I'm reminded of C.P. Snow, who wrote about the two cultures, and it does seem to me, I'm on the humanities side, that often there's a divide between scientists and people in the humanities. They speak different languages. They have a different way of responding to experience.
Yes, that's changing.
That's changing.
I think because increasingly we're finding some scholars in the humanities, especially in criticism and history, are reaching into the sciences, particularly the biological sciences, to develop new dimensions, new depths to what they write about. And similarly, the sciences themselves, I don't think are being deliberately imperial when they are in subjects like neuroscience, in cognitive psychology, and the evolutionary studies of human condition in the brain are moving increasingly close to the domains of the social sciences and humanities. 21st century is going to be a very exciting time.
So what do you foresee for yourself, maybe for both of you, or for your own writing, and also maybe generally for science in the 21st century?
You know, this idea of the two cultures is long gone, in my view. The center I could co-found at ASU, at the Arizona State University, is called Center for Social Dynamics and Complexity. There is a core group working on social insects, but we are about 40 people from anthropology, sociology, political sciences, physics, mathematics. And when you get really together and you have bi-weekly brainstorming meetings, and you explain to each other what is the main topic you are interested in, and you see there is a lot of commonality. Often the same question we ask in working on social insects, people working on the brain ask the identical question.
Yeah.
The brain works like a superorganism. You know, how nature and culture finds similar solution to common problems is a major issue. And we can only learn from this interdisciplinary interactions.
I understand that, and I think you're right. The disciplines within the sciences are breaking down, but I think maybe one of you has made this point, that there is an asymmetry between what scientists are expected to know about the humanities and what people in the humanities are expected or capable, perhaps, of knowing about science. And as I said, reading your book, there were large chunks that were inaccessible to me because I didn't have the scientific and mathematical background. And do you see this as a bridgeable gap? Is this something that has to be remedied through education, or do you think it's not as important? There are other ways for science to be explained, better ways that would make it more accessible.
It's got to be bridged.
Yeah.
We have to realize that, like it or not, we are now in an advanced scientific civilization. And the problems of humanity can often, well, I like to describe them as saying that we live in a Star Wars civilization. We have Stone Age emotions. We haven't been able to change any of that. We live in medieval institutions. We haven't found exactly how to get that straightened out. And we have godlike technology. Now, that's a very dangerous condition for an advanced civilized species to be in. And one of the ways out of it is to increase the quality of education in science and technology, but to do it in a way that makes it relevant to everyday experience and what people really care about. That's the challenge of education in science, in my view.
One of the things that I noticed that you mentioned was that in talking about science, the importance of story. And I think that is key to making it accessible, teaching it properly to a new generation.
In fact, I have finished and am now editing a novel which takes exactly that approach. And it's a Southern novel. And it contains many elements of the current situation in the South and how the Old South has finally made peace with the new, and how tensions are being relieved within different social groups, between religious groups and non-religion and so on. But basically what it does is to track those new developments in the South that I know and love through a different medium completely. And that is the struggle over land management and conservation versus development. And then I have I take the description of the actual environments themselves and of organisms in them, including ant societies, to illustrate the great value that is being perceived in these remaining wild environments in the South, to make a point.
I'm fascinated by the way in which your career mimics, in a sense, some of the ideas that you note about the superorganism, and the way in which your writing seems to move according to what the demands of a particular environment are, finds the genre or the expression to meet that need. So here, I guess, in terms of your ecological interests, you felt the novelistic form was the most appropriate form?
It's one of the most, in my view. We've tried everything else. Preaching,
So that's
preaching,
so interesting.
explaining the science of it. I wrote a book called The Creation, in which I invited evangelicals and other religious believers in America to join with the scientists to save the creation. And so another way of approaching it wasn't my only reason for writing this book. It was something in me I had to get out. But another approach is telling stories. I mean, we need something beyond Faulkner and Harper Lee and the great novelists. Yeah, something beyond them, and something that really takes storytelling in novelistic form into the 21st century.
Have you read the draft of this book?
No, I think it's not typed yet, isn't it?
It was. A version was
Yeah,
typed, but right now the full
Don't
version.
you want the Bavarian mind
what
to
he
take a look at
wanted,
this book?
Ed once asked me, and we was still deeply involved with the superorganism, so I said, not now, but you know, storytelling, you mentioned it, we also tell stories which we discover in nature, and what is nice science writing is you tell the story. Find a good story, analyze it in great detail, and then tell it. And I wanted just to say that the book, you are right, certain sections are very technical, but nevertheless, you can skip them. Just go on and pick. There are many parts which are easy accessible. Yeah. You know, we wanted to write a book and tell the stories, the fascinating stories which the ants tell us. But we also wanted to tell our scientific colleagues something. And so it was really an attempt, we have never done this on this level, to write a scientific book, but accessible also to the intelligent, non-scientist reader. But by all means, skip the pages where there are equations or whatever, and go on, and you will not be lost. You know?
I will
yes.
vouch for this. I mean, it's
yes.
a massive book, and we're drawing to the end here, so I'm going to conclude with this statement. This is a massive book, a beautifully produced book. The photographs are fabulous, but the stories in it are extraordinary. There are moments of such clarity and that I found so compelling. But I will say there were points where I had to skip for a few pages. But I guess I want to tell listeners, audience members, to not be deterred when they get
right.
bogged down occasionally. I also want to note that you're wearing an ant tie. I think that's kind of amusing, the theme of the moment. I want to thank you both so much for coming here. This has been a very intense and compelling set of interviews.
Thank you.
Thanks
thank you
so much. And I want to thank you today for joining us at the Drexel interview. Yeah.